After 11.
After 11, yes. We, when it comes to a feeling of love that you have, how many ways can you express that feeling? A feeling is not an expression until it comes into a word or an action. So you can have the feeling of love, but until you say, I love you, or until you bring some flowers or a gift or do an act of loving kindness, the feeling is just deep down inside of us and isn't connected with anyone else. Welcome to Tanya Today. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad Zichron Kadesh in Montreal, Canada, where it's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. We are in chapter 11, and in some places, chapter 11 is bankruptcy. If you file for chapter 11, you are bankrupt. Well, there might be a lot of bankruptcy out there, but in the study of Tanya, we will never become bankrupt. Not bankrupt, at least, of our integrity, not bankrupt of our goodness. We will be enhancing it, growing it. We have learned previously that God has 7 divine attributes, emotive attributes. And hence, that's why we have 7 days of the week. Each attribute is responsible, the primary responsible for each day of the week that animates that day, gives life to that day. But an attribute, an emotion, isn't an expression to another. It's only something that's a feeling from within the individual. And even thinking the emotion is an expression. What is thinking an expression? Of who to who? What is thinking an expression of who to who? Ourselves to ourselves, exactly. When you think about the emotion that you have of love towards another, that's the way you are expressing that love to yourself. Where does otherness truly come to be actualized? Is when what? Spoken. When it's spoken. When that emotion isn't merely thought, because again, that's an expression of that feeling, that emotion to you. But when you say it in words, then that emotion is then externalized. It's externalized by the fact that now another is a recipient of that feeling that you have inside of you. With this, then we can understand the 10 utterances that God uttered in order to create beings. In other words, if it was just the emotion, by way of example, in our soul, that we had an emotion, that emotion would never give rise to anything tangible and real. It would stay inside of us. It wouldn't even be real to us because we wouldn't think it. And even if we did think it, then it's only real for me. But where does otherness come? When I speak it, then it's real for the other person. That sentiment of, I love you, right? Or you're wonderful, you're amazing, whatever it is. Right? So likewise, well, and further, if that feeling of emotion that I have, of a loving kindness that I feel inside of me, then now comes into my thought, how many ways could that be expressed? Three. Many. Could be expressed many. Not just 22, because there's 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, right? Because I could be expressed, I love you, you're amazing. Without you, life wouldn't be the same, right? Those are just three. How many more could you express? Ad infinitum, right? Ad infinitum. So likewise, when it comes to God, right? The metaphor is from us to understand that just as it is in us, so likewise it is in us that God reveals the flow of his divine light, his divine energy. His divine energy. Let's focus on the learning. We don't have to worry about anything else, right? Through the utterance and the combination of letters. Because remember, just like when I express the word to somebody that I love you, that gives them, at least psychologically and emotionally, gives them what? It gives them vitality, not just pleasure. It gives them vitality, it gives you vitality, right? So all the more so is when God expresses, he doesn't just give pleasure or give vitality, he brings it into existence, the reality of the thing that he speaks, right? That power of the life force, which is the utterance of God. So, for example, when God said, Vayehi or, let there be light, right? Yehi or, let there be light. Those letters are the letters that then are infused in light that now give it not just vitality, but give it existence. That's what God does, right? And he's bringing it into existence in a manner of something from nothing. Something from nothing, he's bringing it into existence. Now, we see it as separate words that give different things a unique vitality and a unique existence. Light is one expression of God's kindness. What's another expression of his kindness? Water. That's also an expression of his kindness, right? So when God says Mayim, the word Mayim, those letters that make up a word become the actual vitality of water itself, and not just a vitality, but bring it into existence, something from nothing into existence. From our perspective, we see water different than light. It's a different expression of kindness. Just like if I would say to a person, I love you, or you're amazing, it's a different expression of the feeling of love and kindness that's inside of me. From God, also we see it as distinctive, but that's only from our perspective. Our perspective, we see that God is animating this thing differently than that thing. But from God's perspective, that word of his is bound up totally with that emotion. By us, it's not bound up totally with our emotion, right? The words "I love you," that's why they can be easy. And sometimes someone will tell you, it's easy to say that, right? It's easy to say it, right? Prove it, exactly. Why is it easy to say? Because it's not necessarily bound up with the emotion itself, because it could be said. But by God, it's bound up with his emotion totally. And his emotion is bound up with the essence of God himself. So from God's perspective, it's not like different expressions that are separate and different. It's all bound up with him in a perfect unity. That utterance of his. In that utterance, right, which is 22 letters, which we're going to get into the letters more precisely later, is two things. There's the utterance and there's the breath. Because when you speak, there's the utterance, right? But there's also the breath that comes out that makes it verbalize that utterance, right? That makes it more real or mamash, like it gives it substance, right? There wouldn't be substance to the word that we say if we wouldn't have the breath that it comes out. Otherwise, there was no breath coming out of my mouth, right? And therefore there was no verbalization. So it wasn't completely actualized. So in the vitality that God and the existence that God brings to everything that he creates, there's both the utterance and the breath of God. Right? The breath we see, and we see that specifically by the creation of man. Adam, God said, what did he say? Let us make man. What's that? An utterance, right? So it's expressing more the utterance, which is not the verbalization, not the breath, but the fact that you utter a word. But there's also, at the same time, it says that he blew into him the breath of life through his nostrils. And that's also part of the divine speech, right? There's a divine speech and breath. And both are both are coming from God, whereby me, when I utter it, it comes outside of me and it becomes now a reality in this world. That word by God, it's not outside of him, but perfectly united. That the word of God, the utterance and the breath of God are perfectly united with his divine emotion. That was what prompted it, right? In the case of light and water, it's chesed, perfectly united with God's divine emotion. And that divine emotion further is perfectly united with God himself, the essence of God. And therefore, in a perfect, not a compound unity, but a perfect simple unity, from God's perspective, it's all him.
You could use one letter, no?
Yes. But one letter then, from his perspective, it is like one letter. From his perspective, it is just him, not even a letter. From our perspective, now we have the essence of God, that's Ein Sof. We have an emotion of God, which is already giving some parameter and definition, but yet it's something beyond, right? And then now we have that emotion that gives rise to the divine emotion of chesed, of loving kindness, that gives through a word that's being expressed by articulation and breath, that gives rise to light versus water, right? Just like my feeling of love inside can be expressed by I love you or you're an amazing person. They're giving rise to two different things. So we see it as two different things.
Yeah.
Right? God sees it all an expression of him. Right? He sees it all an expression of him. Is that clear? And right, continuously. Any questions, any comments? Remind you tonight, Torah studies at 6:30. Come and join us. I don't see any questions.
So if God from his end is expressing everything just as one, like he's one singular entity, and then he's expressing it like, you can express love in an infinite amount of ways. So there's no boundaries to the way that he can express his love. Like he doesn't even establish his own boundaries for how he can express his love to us.
Does he need boundaries? He
I mean,
doesn't
like
need
there are-
boundaries. Is he bound by boundaries? No.
No, but does he establish his own? Like the world, there's only so. To my perspective, it would seem like there's only so. There might be thousands of ways to express love, but like there's not like unlimited ways, or maybe there are, but
Yeah. Just like there's, you can always add one more number. Could you add more and more expression? Yeah, you could,
Yeah.
right?
But the way he expresses his love, like you said, it's built. It's not like it all comes from the same. Like it does come from the same place, but it's manifesting through different means.
Right.
Like he can love us when he like also
the point being there's there's 2 points over here. From God's perspective, it's all him. Not even expression of him. It's him, period.
Yeah.
Right? It's him, period. Right? From our perspective, we don't see it that way. We can't understand it that way.
Mm-hmm.
We have to understand that, light is different than water. Yes, it's all from him. It's all emerges from him. And we can understand now the word or is different than mayim, and therefore comes to a different created being as a result of, that word, right? That is the power of its existence, the power of its vitality. We get that, right? Now it's hard for us to wrap our minds exactly how that's exactly one with the infinite of God, because we have no experience in that, because my word is not one with me.
Yeah.
Right? Not one with me. Even when it's an expression that's really of me, but it's still something, an expression of me that even leaves me, right? So not perfectly one with me. So, the question would be maybe, so then why is God doing this? I mean, he could do it with one letter. God's omnipotent. He could create it with one letter. He doesn't even need a letter. It could just be directly from the Ein Sof of God. Why does he need all of this?
But it's not concealing anything.
Purpose?
What does he need it for? But is there not purpose without that? Does God need this whole way to do this? No. Do we need these 12 chapters to learn in order for God to create the world? No. God could have done it any way he wanted to, right? Why did he do it this way?
Have a real connection with us.
How so? That's true. He wants a connection with us. He wants a relationship with us. But how is this creating that?
Because it's to prevent, if his love was just so overwhelming that there was no sort of distinction and no sort of different.
No, he could make a distinction. It just comes from the essence of him. He could do that.
But then wouldn't he need letters? He couldn't just do
right. He doesn't need it. Does God need letters to do this? No. He chose to, but does he need it? No. Why did he choose this?
To create distinction. I don't know.
No, he can do the distinction without it. He's not limited to doing it with letters. Because this way we could learn this and know him. Otherwise, we would not know him. If he did it from Ein Sof, then we just say, God created the world, Ein Sof, that's it. God's limitless. He can do whatever he wants. And therefore, all we would be able to do is come on to him. But we wouldn't have a real relationship with him. A relationship means that you can know something about him. If you don't know something about another individual, what do you have? You don't have a relationship with them. You know them, then that can give you a connection to them.
Yeah.
By knowing them, now you can feel connected. If you don't know them, right? X in Malaysia, you don't know. You're not gonna you don't have no relationship with that person. X. Actually, you now know something. He's called X in Malaysia. Oh, that's already something. But here it'd be beyond that, right? It's just
Like give us a language almost?
no, what he's doing is by doing this, he's giving us an apparatus that we can now learn and know something about God within creation. We can have an appreciation about how God is animating this cup, how he's animating this person, how he's animating this book. We can understand it through this that we're talking about. So we can have an appreciation, an awareness, and through that, an appreciation of God's realness in creation, and therefore that deepens the relationship. We need it so it can deepen the relationship. Yes, absolutely. Otherwise, it would be all we would have is not an awareness of God, a knowledge of God. All we could have is faith in God that he's beyond. And that's it. And it's true, he is beyond. But God wants us to own our relationship. You can't own something that's beyond you. You can only own something that's of you. Because if owning it means it's yours. How could it be yours if it's got nothing of you and the awareness of God? So God gives us an apparatus. This is an apparatus that God creates the world through in order that we can know him and therefore have a deeper connection and relate to him, right? Can't relate to something that's beyond you, that you have no connection to, you have no awareness of. Merle, can negative thoughts be God's expression of love? No.
So the only way God brings things into existence is through love.
No, through Gvura, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Chod, Yesod, Malchus, the seven emotions.
Every day was different.
But when you're saying that like God is like building this sort of mechanism through which we can like kind of climb back and know him, but that's only emanating from his love. So is there like another sort of way that we could go up and understand like his chesed or his other attributes? They're all like this. It's not like this is the only way up to him. Like even his judgment, you could do this sort of same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, but here we're not talking about, we're talking about God as creator here. We're not talking about God in my my personal connection. Here it's about appreciating God as creator and knowing him that way, right? Knowing him that way, as opposed to knowing him and what he wants from me personally. That's different. That's not him as creator. That's him as my father.
Yeah.
That's him as my king.
Yeah.
That's not what we're talking about over here. We're talking not bigger than that. It's actually not bigger. It's lesser. That's only his creator. Personal relationship is different. This is to know him in creation as creator, which is like the master of the world. But then he's my father.
Yeah.
That's that was the first 53 chapters of Tanya, right? This is different. John is asking, could the 10 spheres be likened to telephone lines through which God communicates with us? Yeah. Yeah, but the telephone lines are not an expression of anything. They're only the lines to express, right? So it might be like the 10 spheres, maybe. Yeah, it could, but it's not 10 different because all lines are the same. So it breaks down the metaphor, but there's something good to the metaphor in that, John. Thank you. All right. All right, folks. Amazing. I don't see any other questions. Folks, a reminder tonight, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Come and join us. for the Torah portion. You don't want to miss it. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you for Chabad Zich and Kadeshim in Montreal, Canada. It's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. Have an amazing, great day. Thank you.